Hello and welcome back to Simple Time Studios. Today we're going to be returning to a game I really liked last year, Everyday Heroes by Evil Genius Games. And we're also returning to a setting I've shown a few times by the time this episode airs, the Orion Commonwealth. If you haven't seen my previous solo game with Lieutenant Jeremiah Watson, the Orion Commonwealth is an optimistic, noble, bright space opera setting of explorers and discovery. For our solo adventure, I am running Psion Novastar through my Dungeon 23 entry. Psion Novastar is a heroic scientific explorer in a space opera setting I've been creating for the past several years. Always a dangerous idea, turning a book character you created into a TTRPG character who can be killed, but he's supposed to be an adventurer, and what is life without a little risk? Anyway, back to Psion and Everyday Heroes, a hero in 6 steps character creation process. Step 1 is a concept, which I already have. Psion Novastar is a scientific explorer roaming the galaxy in his ship, the Insatiable Curiosity. While he often travels alone, he also has a network of friends that travel with him from time to time. He's a bare uplift of the Orion Commonwealth, a life form created by a long-vanished alien species by twisting and fusing human DNA with Ursan DNA. As Everyday Heroes largely skirts around non-human origins and, at the time of writing, Intergalactic Heroes is not sure how it wants to represent them, we're just going to cop out and focus his stats in a way that best depicts a hyper-intelligent, space-plushy, bipedal brown bear. Which means an emphasis on constitution and intelligence, but more on that in a bit. Anyway, the last part of Step 1 is to pick an archetype and a class. For those just tuning in from D&D 5th edition, this is your class-subclass combo. There are 6 archetypes: strong, agile, tough, smart, wise, and charismatic. Each archetype is pretty self-explanatory. Tough heroes tank hits, smart heroes use their brains to manipulate the environment, wise heroes use their perception to notice things others would miss, and so on. Psion is definitely a smart hero. And as for his class, I'm picking the Field Researcher. Originally printed in the Kong Island Cinematic Sourcebook and reprinted again in Vault Volume 1, the Field Researcher is a plucky field scientist that's 1 part biologist, 1 part explorer. In a modern context, it's a good class for cryptozoologists, Indiana Jones-type characters, and far-roaming National Geographic explorers that make Indy look like a chump. It also works well for a scholarly explorer of alien planets, and Psion's particular background in the sciences, so we're taking it. Like the other 5 archetypes, smart heroes have multiple classes that represent a specialization of the archetype. Some of them more appropriate to certain classes, certain adventures than others. We will pick Field Researcher because that most definitely fits the kind of adventure we're sending Psion on. Step 2 is picking his background. As Psion comes from the Orion Commonwealth, a fairly high-tech society that values scholarly and techie pursuits, there are a couple that come to mind. Out of all of them, I picked Gamer, mostly for the dexterity attribute boost and to get insight as a skill, although exploit will definitely be a funny ability if I get the chance to use it. Step 3 is picking his profession. We are going with the science profession primarily for thematic reasons, although the science lessons ability is interesting for both thematic and game reasons. Step 4 is determining his ability scores. I went with the standard set option, which gives me a 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8 to arrange however I wish. I'll make intelligence his highest stat, give him a 14 in constitution for durability, give him a 13 in wisdom for perception, make his strength a 12 since he is a bear, and make his dexterity and charisma his lowest stats. I then add the +1 to intelligence from his profession, the +1 to dexterity from his background, and then spend my remaining free +1s to charisma and dexterity again. This leads to nothing being lower than a 10, and his highest stat giving him a +3 modifier. He's highly intelligent, perceptive, and tanky, but average dexterity-wise because he's a big squishy teddy bear, and average at social encounters. Not the most hyper-specialized min-maxed character, but at least nothing has a negative modifier, which is probably better for solo play. And one of the field researcher's class abilities allows me to switch dexterity for intelligence when attacking with a ranged weapon, so I'll be a decent shot anyway. Step 5 is finalizing the details of my archetype and class. This means writing down class abilities, hit points, and defense. Because I'm a smart hero, I get 2 particularly unique abilities called Plans and Genius, respectively. Plans are basically my spells. Special abilities I can activate to gain an advantage by manipulating the environment or using my big brain to figure things out. Genius gives me Genius points, a resource I can spend to activate my plans, and can replenish after a long rest, or a short rest once I get to level 2. I select my plans from either my class list or from a shared list that all smart heroes have access to. For my first 3 plans, I pick 3 from the field researcher list that best represent Psion's ability to quickly think his way out of the bizarre situations he frequently ends up in. I Figured It Out will help him with sussing out the properties of alien artifacts and bizarre technological prototypes without injuring himself. It Has a Weakness will help with figuring out the weaknesses of hostile entities. And lastly, What If We Used This will help with improvising or finding a solution to problems. Step 6 is the finishing touches like personality and appearance. Since I'm statting up a character I've already created for my writing projects, I already have a good description and general personality in mind. Bonus, Step 7, is equipment shopping. Here I pick the recommended suggestions from his background, profession, and character class before using the Intergalactic Heroes beta rules for making substitutions of equal value. I can already hear the question, why not just use the Intergalactic Heroes beta rules for everything? At the time of writing the script for this episode, the IGH beta rules have been out for roughly 6 months. I already ran 3 solo adventures. I used the rules for most of Robert Manus's Grimmer Space campaign. This adventure would have been my 4th if I used the IGH beta rules exclusively. It's a good beta and a good promotion for the full game. I'm having a lot of fun with it. But while there are a few options that can represent most of Psion's friends, nothing in the beta seems to fit Psion himself. And Evil Genius Games has stated several times that while Intergalactic Heroes is supposed to be a standalone product that doesn't need everyday heroes to play, the two are also supposed to use the same rule set to allow for crossplay. So someone should play around with that to see if it's true. Now that the character is done, where am I sending him? Back in 2023, I attempted the Dungeon 23 challenge to create a 356 room dungeon. Since room was left intentionally vague, I created an abandoned Ecumenopolis, a planet-spanning city in Psion Novastar's universe. Every level was a building or city district, and every room was a point of interest that ranged in size from a broom closet to several football stadiums slapped together. Ultimately, I tapped out a challenge at around 70 rooms or so. Since then, it's been collecting dust, so now I'm going to explore it in a solo game and see what else I can add or what needs adjusting. Finally, Psion will not be able to explore everything. This dungeon was already huge when I last left off, and now that I've had some time to recharge, I'm probably going to add a few more locations that weren't in the original draft. There are a number of reasons for limiting the scopes of his adventures on this planet. The main 2 being that I want to hit home just how big an Ecumenopolis is, and I don't want him to be the only hero to explore this little corner of my universe. End of episode.